Okay, here we are in the very first tutorial for 3D Studio Max that I'm going to create. Now, I've got a lot of experience doing these for Civil 3D, but this is the first one in 3D Studio Max, so hopefully this will go just as smooth. Anyway, the exercise we were going to do, it was from week 1, and that was on page 12-25, chapter 12, and it's tutorial number 2, which is the logo spinning around the Earth. Okay. Anyway, we had a little bit of difficulty trying to finish that one up. So I wanted to go ahead and make a tutorial for us here to help the students along. Okay, so what the text asks us to do is go ahead and create a sphere. So what we want to do is go to a standard primitive and then go to sphere, and they ask us to place this in the not quite sure, in the top or on the top viewport. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up, and then I'll come back over here to this window and change the dimension to 58.42 as the author indicates. Now, I don't really think it really matters. I think it's just kind of, you know, some arbitrary number, but why the 0.42, I'm not quite sure. Anyway, so after we create the first one, let's go ahead and name it oops, forgive me for that. We're going to name that Earth Sphere. Earth Sphere. Okay. And then what we want to do is we want to create a clone of that. So let's go to Edit and Clone, which is just Control V. I don't want to make an instance, but I want to make a copy. Now, the instance will give me an exact duplicate, but if either the instance or the original changes, that will change the other one. And that's not necessarily what we want to do. Okay, at this point, we can go ahead and change the name to wireframe sphere. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right away. Wireframe. Hey, you know, and if I misspell stuff, forgive me because I'm infamous for that. Did I do that? Sphere. There we go. Say OK. So now we have one residing in the other. So what I want to do is go ahead. I want to leave them there for the time being, but I'm going to go ahead and work on. I'm going to have to select it maybe through this window here. Now, if you notice, I just invoked this window, and now I have both of my objects that I can select, either one, from this window. Now, you probably are familiar with it, but this is a handy way to be able to select your objects if you can't pick them right in the screen. Okay? Go ahead and close that out. Let me go ahead and do something while I should have kept that window open. Now let me pick the wireframe sphere, and let me go to, this isn't Maya. I can keep that window open and still go to modify it in Maya. That's just something I cannot do in Max. Now I know why he made 1.42 bigger than the other, because one's going to reside inside the other. So what I want to do is I selected the wireframe sphere using that window, which I can never remember the name of. Select my name window, and I'm going to change the radius of the sphere to 58 and go ahead and enter. So one's just slightly smaller than the other. Okay. The next thing we want to do is create the material for the for both of the spheres that we've created. The first sphere I'm going to work on is the Earth sphere, the one excuse me, that's going to represent the Earth. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to go to the material editor here, and notice I have the slate version up, and the author asks us to go back to the compact mode. I'm sorry. Okay, so now we select the first material slot here, and I think he asks us to create it as a blend, and that's what it's set it to now. And for the color, for the diffuse color, I'm going to, oops, I clicked it by accident. I'm going to use the, I'm going to navigate over to maps. I'm going to go to, I have to go to find bitmap here. There it is. Say OK. And here's a bunch of samples that the computer's directing the program to, but I want to go to the desktop where I placed all my tutorial files. Okay, so the author asks you to pick the earth map color, and we're going to say okay, and that's now residing in the first slot. Right, so now the author then asks us to attach it to the sphere, but I kind of want to point out something here. I'm going to go ahead and populate the second slot here, but the second slot I'm going to populate with what's called a opacity mat. Now, when you mat something out, you're blocking the display of what the mat is cutting out. It kind of acts like a cookie cutter, okay? So the way the mat works is that anything that is black is hidden and anything is white comes forward, okay? So and then any shade of gray in between there is a variant of that opacity. So let's say I have something that migrates from black to white, but then there's whole tonality of gray in between. Then to some degree or another, that gray is going to be translucent in one form, or transparent, I'm sorry, from one degree to another, okay? So let's go down here to and find where we can place those mats. Let's see. Maps, there we go. Okay, I want to place this under opacity. Here we go. And I want to go to bitmap. Bitmap, say okay. Again, I want to have it to give me the feel of Maya, and unfortunately it's not. Okay, say okay. So note how now this this material's been knocked out in the background here. Can you see that? Now all you have is the, well, I guess it would be gray, North American continent, but notice how this has all kind of been knocked out. So what I want to do is I want to apply that mat onto my colored map here, and I just have to find it. Oh, it's got to go up to parent, that's why. Go to maps, go up here to diffuse color. Now I got to go to opacity, go to bitmap, say okay, and I grab that one, say okay, and now you can see that it's knocked out the ocean, but I keep the terrain, okay? But now I need to apply that to my world sphere, so I go back up here to my selection window, go to the Earth sphere, and that should select that one, and I'm going to go ahead and apply this material to that, okay? So now the way to view that is, oops, wrong one, viewport, materials, here we go. Realistic materials with maps. There we go. Eventually it'll come in. There we go. Okay, so this cyan one that we're seeing behind there, that's still the wireframe. Okay, so that's still back there. Okay, I'm going to pause this for a second so I can kind of catch up with myself here. Now you're going to find as I'm working through these tutorials that sometimes I forget or purposely omit stuff. And one of the things I omitted was making this material a two-sided material. Okay, so this is going to hopefully refresh. Okay, there we go. I was going to have a problem there. Okay, two-sided material, and that is so we can see the terrain on the backside when we look through the gridded sphere that we're going to create right now. Okay, again, one of those instructions that I forgot to do is render the globe, and notice it looks pretty cool. Okay, now all we have to do is do the grid. So let's go to our material editor, and let's pick swatch number 3 here. And in swatch number 3, the author asks us to change the colors to 239, 106, and 18. So that's going to be 239, 106, and 18. Okay. So return now. You see where I changed that? It is in this dialog box right here. Okay. And what I'm going to have to do is go back to my selection box here and choose the wireframe. And I can say OK, and I can go ahead and assign that. And the next thing I need to do is I need to assign it a wireframe mode. Okay. And I see what happens there. It looks kind of cool. So let's go ahead and render that. Take a look at it. Okay, that's exactly what we're supposed to be coming up with. Now, one thing I want to note is that let me rotate this a little bit and then render it again. Notice that because when we set the two-sided rendering, we have the terrain showing up on the backside as well. Okay, now where that could be a pain is if you're rendering a complicated model where you have just a ginormous amount of poly count, that could really drag your machine down. It really can hinder it. So you have to kind of keep that in mind. If you have situations where you need to model your or you need to render your models with on two sides, then go ahead and do it. But I suggest not doing it. Okay, proceeding with the this gridded material. The author asks us now, I'm on page 1227, way down on the bottom. I just finished step 16, and I'm going to be jumping over to step 17, and I have to set the specular highlights in the specular level spinner. Okay, boy, that's a tongue twister. Specular level, specular highlights. I need to set that to 53. I'm going to take another render here. Now notice we have this kind of like Bezier curve here, and the sharper it is, the more specularity it's going to throw. And specularity basically is like, let's say you have glass, and it depends on how shiny it is. Basically, think of the specularity as shininess. Okay. Okay. Notice I did something here. I went ahead and pulled off the gridded globe sphere over here off to the side. The author in step 21 on page 1228 asks you to align the grid sphere along with the globe sphere here. But since you cloned them, one would think that they're like sitting right on top of each other. But for whatever reason, let's say they weren't, and it came off, you can go ahead and align them by going to the Tools, Alignment tool here. And since I have the gridded sphere here, I go ahead and hit alignment, and now my prompt is to select what I want to align it to, and I want to align it to this one. Then this dialog box comes up, and I can choose either center or pivot point. I'm going to choose pivot point here, and I want it aligned in the XYZ location. Now you can pick particular ones whichever way you need to align it, and so you have those options. So since I hit it, it went ahead. Since I hit these up here, it went ahead and aligned it. And I canceled it. So let me do it again, real quick. Align, and hit what I wanted to align. Hit XYZ position. Man, I'm too quick here. Should take my time. Say OK. Now we're good. Let's go ahead and render this out a little bit. Whoops. Let's turn that about like that, and maybe right there. See what that looks like. Okay, looks pretty good. Now let's go. We're going to the next step, which is now creating the text.